Spiritual Psychics TV, and this show, Being Spiritual, with me, Ashley Robinson, your host this evening. Wonderful to be back online, back live with you tonight, 28th of April. Where is the time and the year going by? My little baby boy just celebrated his first birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking through some Facebook memories and see the anniversaries of these shows, and it's incredible to think that we need to rewind about 3 years in the sort of the run up to the start of the pandemic and the opportunities that came through the challenges. But wonderful to be continuing to do this show to you. Wonderful to be working with you tonight. Wonder if you're joining us for the first time, or have you been following me for the last 2 to 3 years? If you are here for the first time, a special warm welcome to you. Do participate and interact and engage with us, folks. We absolutely love that. It is an interactive show. If you're on YouTube, you need to make sure you're logged in. You can participate in the live chat. And if you're on Facebook, just make sure you're following the mainstream. Talking about mainstreams, you can of course forward this, tag your friends and family and loved ones, put it on your wall, let people know what we're doing. Tonight is Being Spiritual. It's a spiritualist philosophy show. We're going to be doing some private readings as well, and I just mentioned the word we because I've got a very special guest this evening. Good evening, Stephen, that joins me as my special guest this evening. Stephen Mager, welcome to Being Spiritual.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great to have you here. I knew a little bit about you doing your mediumship and your service work. We had the opportunity, we were just discussing that last year, to meet Wimbledon Spiritualist Church when you did a fantastic divine service for us. So great to be on the show together tonight and chatting about viewings. And I think that we've served different spiritualist churches, like Passing Ships at Night. We've sort of crossed. One of those was down on the south coast at Chichester, when I saw that you'd also done some spiritualist philosophy down on the south coast, I believe.
Yes, yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, there's a few people. I think you came down to Kate at her place in Cosham as well.
Yeah. And great that we can chat a bit of spiritualist philosophy tonight and do a couple of readings. You've just seen, hopefully in your comments as well, folks, that SPTV does not use the star system. So Facebook users may be prompted to send stars. I think although you get a couple of free stars from Facebook, actually this is Facebook's way of monetizing, and they're looking to sort of monetize the channel. So please don't send stars to SPTV because they don't get them. They're not operating in that system, and Facebook keep 100% of your money, whereas this channel is 100% free to you. Although you can participate, of course, as a very important patron. And if you want to become a patron, head over to SPTV UK, folks. You can find out a little bit more about that and financial ways of supporting this channel to keep it free. But all of the broadcasting, all of the production, all of the hosts give their time to make this take place. And it's our opportunity, and tonight's my opportunity, to share my knowledge of spiritualism and the truths of spiritualism, my knowledge of life after death. And of course, it's a fantastic opportunity to bring Stephen on for him to share his knowledge of life after death, or life after that change we call death, and spiritualism. I actually used that phrase earlier on, Stephen, at my son's primary school. So he goes to a Catholic school in South London, and the local canon on a Friday has been buying some sweets for the kids and sort of letting them pick up the sweets. And I was chatting away to the canon. We were talking about the day, beautiful sunshine. I sort of, spring's my favorite time of the year, and Easter actually. And I was sort of looking at him, and I said, yeah, from a religious point of view, I know a lot of people look forward to Christmas. I love Easter. And he said, oh yeah, great, the resurrection of Jesus. And I said, yeah, for me though, it's more about the celebration of Jesus's life after that change that his body went through called death. And you can see the canon looking at me saying, I think we're on the same page, but I'm not sure if that is exactly the same sort of words that I would have used at the service. But plain English, I think, Stephen, I mean, you and I have both sort of found this. In order to contextualize stuff which can be quite complicated, just using plain English and simple words is a way that everyone can sort of find that spiritualism is compatible with them. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. I think spiritualism suffers with jargon, like anything. Some of that jargon isn't even in English, chakras and different terminology. And we need to simplify it because it really is quite simple. And,
absolutely.
When it comes to other faiths, we really do share more than we conflict by quite a large margin as well when you look at it. And there really shouldn't be much of a confrontation between any religion, but unfortunately that's what we see.
No, we can talk a little bit about that today because, folks, we're going to be talking about transformative spiritualism and how spiritualism, spiritual living, a spiritual life can be sort of transformative. I want to do a couple of hellos and welcomes before we really get stuck into that. And of course, if you ask us some really good questions, hopefully our producer will pick one of those questions. We'll better read it online and answer it for you. And then we're going to do a reading too. So we can do a couple of hellos and welcomes. And I will say hello to Daddy Ray Robinson. Now, he's only Daddy to me. That's not like his wrestling name or anything, folks. But Mum is no doubt with him. I say always tease her a little bit because I know that Friday nights at 8 o'clock is actually quite late for my mum now. I know she likes to stay up and watch the show. So good evening to you, Mum and Dad. And then Stephen's going to pick up the next hello and we'll do it and vice versa.
Yes, so hello. Sorry, I can't see the lady's name. She said hello to Richard Ashley.
Millie B.
Lily B. No, I can see it. It looks very small.
Yeah. Well, good evening,
right.
Millie.
I do have a banner across the top that was blocking her name.
We're just working out some of the tech support at our end to make sure we can see all your comments later. Jeanette Mack joins us from YouTube and says hello, everyone.
I'll feel sure. Thank you for the lovely comments. Good evening.
And the lovely Stay Shaw, good evening to you.
Good evening from South Wales. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Do love to know where you're connecting from, folks. You don't have to, be a specific, say it's from the toilet in my house, but parts of the country and the world is always nice. Rebecca Scott, good evening to you.
And sorry, I'm just trying to see your name. Yeah, I hope everything have a good day. Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Millie Brown.
Just trying to see how I can get rid of this banner. It's saying Spiritual is using a device that would record, and it's covering up their names. But
well, hello, Millie Brown. Welcome. I think you're joining us on Facebook tonight. And Dawny Walden, good evening to all. She says, hi, welcome, Dawny.
And I can't see the name. I'm sorry.
Dale Evans.
Yeah.
She's asking if any good things come away. I'm sure they are. And you are the architect of your universal journey. But perhaps we'll better draw a card for you later as well. And Simon Boot, good evening to you.
As Carolyn, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Oh, that's perfect, Richard. Thank you.
Orla Madden, first time joining us this evening. Beautiful name, Orla. I don't know if that's links towards Ireland. Just got back from Ireland a couple of weeks ago. We were scattering ashes of my wife's nan, and we had a long trip to Tipperary. My kids got to understand the context of the song, of why it's a long way to Tipperary, as we drove up from South London to North Wales and across on the ferry. Beautiful name. And welcome your first time to the show. Producer Sandy, a couple of similarities there to some celebrities.
Julie Caswell, thank you for joining us this evening. Hope you have a good evening with us.
Angela Washford, good evening to you, joining us from the Isle of Wight. I prefer the Isle of Wight ferry to the Irish ferry in terms of the distance. It's a lot more manageable with the kids.
Hi, Angela. Thank you for joining us.
And Jenny, and I think that's Jenny's joining us from the United States, or she's just saying us. I'm going to take a gamble.
Is that Bonnie? Thank you for joining us.
Anytime.
Should be a lovely evening.
And Tilly joins us from North Dakota. Hi, welcome, Tilly.
And Adele, thank you for joining us from Hertfordshire.
Natasha from, I think that's Tennessee, isn't it? One of my favourite bourbons produced there.
And another one from California is that Shawan. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Hi, Shawana. And Kate, good evening to you. Okay, we'll do a couple of more hellos. So we've got Christine Edie saying hi to Stephen, and we'll start to get on with the show.
Lovely. Thank you all for joining us.
Natasha and Lacey. Okay, fantastic. So sorry if we didn't specifically name you folks, but Kelly got in there as well. Managed to catch that one from Wiltshire. You're all very, very welcome. And if you come for the first time, I say it's Spiritualist Philosophy Show. So get your questions over to us, folks, and the producers hope going to put some of the good questions forward to us. And then if we feel so inspired, we're going to give you some readings off the back of those questions. And Stephen and I are going to talk a little bit about the transformation or the transformative nature and context of spiritualism. We start off by saying we're going to tell you some of our truths. These are truths that have become known to us. Hi, Sarah from New Zealand. We can always caveat anything that, a lot of this is our opinion influenced by our guides and our guide team. We're absolutely entitled to your opinion. We welcome you to challenge us, challenge the status quo tonight. But we work in love and light. We just share with you our knowledge as we have come to see treat. So Tanya Allen there joining us from Australia as well. Good day. Welcome. Got some family over in Brisbane, occasionally checking the show. So I think it's very early now, isn't it? So either very late at night if you've been staying up, or very early in the morning for you, Tanya. But welcome. So before we get into the sort of transformative nature of it, I started to say how I met Stephen. Physically met him at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. But Stephen, what was it that, or how should I say, how and when did you first get involved in spiritualism?
Well, it was a little bit late when I finally decided to sort of get stuck in. For me, anyway. I know I'm very young for the movement, but I'd always known about the spirit world. I had so many experiences as a child. My father told me about his mother, who died before I was born, and she was a clairvoyant medium in South Africa, which was a very limited part of the movement. I think they only had 2 or 3 churches in South Africa. I'm not sure where it was, but it would have been near Johannesburg. And she was told before I was born that I was going to be born. My father already had 2 children. That relationship had broken up. His mother was aware that there was another child coming. She goes to spiritualist churches and had received that as a message. And then when I came along, because my father had been named in a spiritualist church when he was a child, and he was given the name Stephen. So he'd already had his first 2 children, and I came along. And because my grandmother knew that of my arrival, she asked him to give me the name that he was given from Spirit.
Nice.
So that was a nice little link. And I never really thought much of it growing up, except when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I saw my grandmother at the end of my bed, and it was quite a moving experience. And I used to see faces when I was closing my eyes at night, but I never felt uncomfortable. They were all older, smiling ancestors, I suppose, and they're looking back now, because you could feel that family connection. So I never felt uncomfortable with it. But I was always quite a sensitive child, really struggled with it through school. And then after school, got very, very sidetracked through having quite an interesting time. And then when I was about 30, I decided, these experiences I was having were getting a little bit more intense. I had given up drinking and all sorts of other shenanigans. And so my life and my mind and my body were sort of detoxed and clear, but I was having very, very profound visions and experiences. And either I went to a doctor and got it switched off, or I proved that it was real. And I knew that my mind wasn't deteriorating, and I thought I had a grasp on reality, but I just needed to be 100% sure that the people I was seeing were who they said they were. And I finally seeked out a spiritualist church, and it felt like I was coming home. I'd come back from 2 years of traveling in South Africa, and some of the experiences I was quite disturbing. So I just knew I needed to come back and do something about it. And my mum was living in Portsmouth, so I moved to Portsmouth to decide on my next move. And I kept walking from my place to my mum's every day for a cup of coffee and a chat. And I'd walk past this church without realizing it. And one day I just decided to Google spiritualist churches and couldn't believe that I'd literally been walking past one every day for about 6 months and not realizing it. And when I finally walked in there, I did so with a lot of expectations, like a lot of people probably do. I was walking in there expecting to be seriously impressed, and I wasn't impressed with the evidence simply because I had the wrong idea about it. And when I finally got the right idea about it, realized what was going on, and I saw the integrity that mediums were using, even if they weren't the best mediums, I could see the honesty in the way they were trying to work. And I was genuinely interested. So I had a whole bunch of questions in my mind. And although I don't feel those questions were answered, I felt that I was given the right set of questions to go forward with. Because you go in with some really silly questions. The main one is, when am I going to die? And am I going to win a lottery? Should I buy this or should I sell all this? And, very looking back, I can forgive myself for being naive because it's what a lot of people want to know. But I was leaving with these different questions on my mind. Like, how does this work? And how does the medium actually see them? Do they see them objectively, subjectively? And the only really way I could confirm what other people were experiencing was to go through the training that they went through. And I don't think anyone really expects to be a medium. The people who really want to be mediums, I've met a few, and, there's nothing saying that they can't do it, but I find it a little bit odd that someone wants to be a medium. I think if someone wants to know how mediumship works, that's a bit different. Because let's face it, I mean, even Colin Fry, one of the most famous mediums of the last 20 years, he could probably do his shopping without being hassled most days. We're not going to get that famous. There isn't real fortunes involved. So to go onto the path of being a medium, although maybe within the movement we get accused of the ego wanting to be impressed, really it's just to understand what's going on and develop a little bit further. And like we're probably going to talk about the transformative processes. What I noticed, not just with myself but with other people, is how it transformed my life to actually accept the fact that I'm a spiritual being. And despite how difficult my hard times were, they really, on reflection, they were very transformative in themselves. And when you remove that fear of death, something happens to you that you can't really put into words. You get a new lease of life, a new perspective, and that is just so important that it drives people like yourself and me. We're compelled to get more involved in spiritualism, partly to pay back for what it's given us, but also because you just know what it's going to do to other people. You know how it transformed your own life. You know how it's going to do it to someone else.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you for sharing that story. And if those people new to the show, I'm 40 years old now, but I was brought up in spiritualism. My mum and dad both spiritualist, and I remember saying as a young kid that I hope you're not offended, Mum and Dad, that I won't follow in your footsteps. And then at 18, I was sat in a circle wanting to develop. And then I was talking about spiritualist philosophy. And then a couple of years ago, I said to my mum and dad, I want to be ordained. I want to become a minister within spiritualism. I became a celebrant last year, and I'm hoping to complete my probation at the end of this year. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of choices and callings. Like a piece of elastic, and people were thanking you for sharing your introduction. And Millie B has come up with a good question. She was talking about an article she read about the active death stage when people see white lights, possibly about transition to the spirit world. Some scientists have said that's all about the brain shutting down. So I'd like to invite you, Stephen, to comment on that in a minute. Amelia, say first of all, thanks for asking the first question. So we'll give you a reading in a moment after answering your question. And I think both is absolutely possible. And actually, it won't be too too long in the future that actually scientists, I think, end up proving the existence of the spirit world without even trying to do, because we recognize the energy, we recognize the transition. Scientists will talk about the energy required in the human body and being as a vessel to contain the personality, and then we know that energy can't be destroyed, it can only be changed. And actually, I think from a spiritualist and scientific point of view, we talk about that change after our body goes through that change is what we call death, but the body goes through a change in energy. The body and the vessel is finished. The personalities transition to that place that perhaps I call heaven, where we get the personality sort of communicate through. So I think it's absolutely possible that if the body is made of several interfaces, there is an element of your spiritual self, call it your spirit, your soul, or let's keep it simple, your personality getting ready to leave, to transition to the next life after the life and experience you've just had as a human being. And then when scientists explain that as the brain shutting down, isn't that exactly the same as what I just said? The vessel is finished and the brain is switching off the interfaces. When I left the church at Hatbridge today, and you slowly turn off all the lights as you walk towards the doors, that's the brain's way of shutting down and allowing the personality to leave the body. So good question, Millie. I'll let Stephen come in and answer. And then once he's done that, if he feels inspired, he'll give you a bit of a quick reading or message. Otherwise, I'll go straight in and draw a card for you, and he'll come in on the back of that.
Well, it comes down to a fundamental problem. Does the brain create consciousness, or is the brain just a conduit for consciousness? And this is where science on both sides is going to find it very difficult to agree, because both can seem as true at the same time. But the brain, if we look at it as a conduit, it's the interface between the spirit and the material world. But I love that the cover of Pink Floyd's album says it perfectly. You've got a prism. So the soul, the personality is the prism. The light that shines through it is the spirit. And the scatter of the spectrum is your physical life. And in every philosophy, I got very drawn to the Hindu philosophy. Krishna represents the spirit, and he's talking to Arjuna. Arjuna is the soul. And Arjuna is stood in the chariot. The chariot is the physical body that carries you through life. And they're about to go to war as well. And that's a very good, it's a very difficult one, because whenever the spirituals conversation comes up, religion, God, the big question is, why does God allow such evil in the world? Why is there war? Why are there disabled children? And again, these are these silly questions that you walk into a spiritualist church with, and they're only silly after you realize how small they are in the big picture, but they're very important to us when we want answers. And the articles, the scientific research that's been done, when I came into spiritualism, I was expecting to find very little, because it was not mainstream news as far as most people were concerned. It's all been proven by science that the spirit world's a load of rubbish, and communication between yourself and your loved ones is absolutely impossible. When I started finding the spiritualist research that had been done, and also the research that had been done by people who were trying to denounce spiritualism, most of them actually converted to the spiritualist philosophy through their findings. I can't find one single research piece of evidence that suggests spiritualism is impossible and communication is impossible. Instead, what I find are scientists using some very, very different arguments that are totally unscientific. But there's one argument that they literally all use, and they point to a gentleman called James Randi, who put up $1 million prize if anyone could prove psychical or spiritual abilities. And whoever went up in front of him, he just moved the goalposts. And this gentleman wasn't a scientist, he was an entertainer, he was a stage magician and illusionist, and said that every single piece of spiritualist phenomena can be replicated by a magician using stage illusion or mind tricks like suggestion, like a mentalist. And he's passed away now. I don't want to make a joke about him waking up in the spirit world, but I can imagine that he has found himself in the spirit world and is now looking back in and thinking maybe he made a mistake. But this is someone that is used by scientists when they go onto podcasts and television programs. And I'm a big fan of the Joe Rogan podcast, and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku were both on there. And so was Darren Brown. All three of them used the example of James Randi as an argument against psychics, Reiki healers, and mediums. And I think it's amazing that Michio Kaku especially, when you listen to him talk, he can roll off all these different pieces of research. He can name the individuals involved, the year it was published, word for word what they did. So when it came to him discussing afterlife topics, I was extremely interested to hear his answer and thinking maybe he's seen a piece of research that I haven't found. And instead he used the James Randi argument. And it was very disappointing because I hold him in such high regard and still do. But there's a consensus that people who know better, they know that the research is out there, they know the Society for Psychical Research has pretty conclusively proven the afterlife. They also know that it's appeared in courtroom dramas, both in the States and in England, and I'm sure across the world, where it's got to the point where spiritualism can be validated in law, in court, and nearly every single time they'll throw the case out and retry it under a different case that won't involve spiritualism. And that was true in the Helen Duncan case. And I'm sure if you look into the history of spiritualism when it's come up in court, it's quite an interesting history. And the same thing keeps happening. They throw it out of the courtroom because they don't want to validate spiritualism. Because if they do, then we would all be listening to the spirit world a little bit more. And the spirit world are as opinionated as the mediums they come through quite often. But generally, there's a consensus in the spirit world that nuclear weapons are not a good idea. Genetic engineering is not a good idea. Food should be natural and organic. But at the same time, they don't tell us what to do, because what they kind of, I don't know, I'm sure you can agree with me, what the spirit world tend to do is guide your thoughts in a positive direction, and they can work with what you're doing and they can confirm with what you're doing. So if you're a plumber, you get help with plumbing. If you're an electrician, you can get help with electrics. If you're in philosophy of spiritualism, you'll have a philosopher in spiritualism help you from the spirit world. So we can get very good guidance from them. And I think if we had that more often, and especially because, I mean, who am I really? Most of the spiritualists I know are very humble people.
Yeah.
And we're not society's elite. You do wonder why spiritualism, I know we can predate the Fox sisters and the Hydesville rappings, but I think it's very interesting and poignant that some rather young and working class girls of average intelligence and experience were chosen to help kick off the movement of spiritualism from their front room. Okay. So what I love about going to churches, it's very endearing, and sometimes it feels like a Ricky Gervais Fly on the Wall mockumentary, but you walk into a spiritualist church and you feel at home. It feels like someone's front room, and people try to use the language that we all use rather than jargon and things that other people don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And, over the last 40 years, my grandfather, who formed Life After Death Promotions in 1982, I've seen documentary evidence of several, pretty decent spiritualist mediums that took on that challenge and were turned down and weren't given the opportunity to do it because of him moving the goalposts. And a good friend of mine, Ivan Lee, the Vice President of Women of Spiritualist Church, will talk about the fact that there's probably an element of the fact, certainly in 2023, that we're just not all meant to know. It's not meant to be proven beyond all reasonable doubt, because it would fundamentally change the way that we're living our lives, and actually part of the way we're living our lives is also part of an intended experience. And I think they made a really good point about cults. If the spirit world was an absolute, if heaven was an absolute, how would you try a murder? I mean, what would murder do in law? It'd become a transition, wouldn't it? And so they'll come back. You haven't really killed someone. Suicide, what would it do to sort of those suicidal thoughts? and all those types of things. So I think you've raised some really good things. Millie said she was, very much guided by what we just said, and appreciated that. And I know it's already 8:30, folks. We've had a couple of good crunchy questions as well. We promised to be a little bit more punchy in our answers and our readings going forward, so we can get through some more of your questions. But Millie, I drew a card for you, and I'll see if Stephen wants to come in afterwards. Now, this card that I drew for you is the card of the beast. I'm using my medieval deck today. And when I think about this card, and when I ask you to look at it, I think about the dragon representing the challenge of facing up to evil or to darkness. And I got this real sense of conflict that had been resolved, and about you having moral courage, Millie, you doing the right thing in the situation, regardless of your own personal impact, that it wasn't actually in your best interest to do what was done, but it was in the best interest of the situation. And with that, I also, within that beast, I saw an element of bad attitude and bad behavior and bad temper, a spiteful side of someone's nature and of the challenge. And I want to talk about the fact that you stepped up and you challenged the status quo, and that as I drew that card, that was for you. So hopefully that made some sense in that context, Millie. But I want to say, keep on keeping on. You have turned to face the light, but you will quickly turn back and face evil or darkness and extinguish that with light. And I think that's quite a powerful sort of metaphor image there. Stephen, anything you'd like to add for Millie?
Well, it's funny as you're talking about that. I was smiling because what I'm getting is a real sense of, with a lot of respect, I feel more of a gentleman with me on a grandfather link. And the reason I feel more on father's side of the family is because I feel very patriarchal leaning, and a lot of resistance from the young lady to the patriarchy. And I'm sure she's very outspoken, and what I'm feeling is a lot of respect from this gentleman in the spirit world for her gumption is the word I'm getting, that kind of attitude to stand up to authority, which I wholeheartedly share as well. So, and I think it's very specific, like you were saying, Ashley. I think there was a particular moment, and with the beast and card, I was getting more. Sometimes I'm leaning more to, it's a very earthly card. It's about physical life and physical situations, and I feel she's had to stand up very physically for herself and for other people. And I feel that it's on a wave of this sort of new thinking about, not so much bringing down the patriarchy, but raising women up a little bit more.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Great question, Millie. We're getting some, and they're saying thank you very much. And she understood everything we just said, which is great. Thanks, Millie. Thanks for getting in that first question. So do keep your questions coming. And actually, it's what I always love, still, I always use that term that Bill Hughes used on SPT, was about collective consciousness, because not only is there a collective consciousness between you and I, but the questions and the theme that we want to talk about, we've been able to answer questions and give some opinions on the transformative nature. Rebecca has just said, are there traveling mediums that can quickly travel to where others are? So Rebecca, I just asked if you could add a bit more context to that. I don't know if you're talking about that concept of like remote viewing, as in like mediums that can remote view, or psychics that can remotely view physically in their body, stay where they are but see other situations. And I think, yeah, absolutely. Or if you're talking about something different, I think you are talking about that ability to sort of travel. And I just want to share a very quick story. So I've answered the question and say yes, and Stephen can add his opinion. But a wonderful lady that I knew called Vari Kent, who used to refer to herself as the accidental psychic, told me about her parents. And during the Second World War, both her parents were employed by the Ministry of Defence as remote viewers. And a lot of the information was declassified after about 50 years. But her father was parachuted into occupied France, set up with some of the French resistance. And he used to sit in fields or camp in fields, and bivouacs and stuff like that. And as the Luftwaffe was flying to London with intended targets, he would remotely view. He would sort of link in with their cockpits and their coordinates, and then he would send the coordinates back to his wife, who would report it to MOD. And if it was any high profile or sensitive target, they would try and evacuate it. And there was also something that Vari Kent used to talk about, the crafty tricks of war, where as a remote viewer, he'd also try and remotely influence. And there was a number of like cardboard and wooden sort of villages and decoy targets put up by the Home Guard in the UK. And it was claimed that the MOD was able to influence some of that with sheer luck, and some of that with a bit of remote viewing, and change the intended targets and knock people off. So yeah, crafty tricks of war, MOD deploying remote viewers. That's now a matter of fact, which you can find. If I've misunderstood the question, Rebecca, then throw in another one. But Stephen, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot actually. I got very heavily involved. I was very interested in Ingo Swann and the Farsight Institute, based on the film The Many Stare at Goats. And living in Portsmouth, surrounded by naval bases, there's a lot going on underground here as well. And quite a few people were interested in remote viewing these sites, including myself. I always felt a little bit, it feels like trespassing. And it can be if you don't have strict permission to do so. And what I found were there were psychics guarding these places, and when you went to remote view, they were waiting for you. And not only that, the level at which you want to know about someone else's life, you're giving equal and opposite permission for them to view your life. You know, we always talk about putting protection around ourselves. One thing I've discovered in my magical and spiritual practices is minding your own business is the most powerful thing you can do. And remote viewing, although it's possible, it's an area where if you want to keep your own energy and your own life fairly private, remote viewing is definitely something you need to consider very carefully, because although it can give some incredible information, and it happens as a byproduct of mediumship. I know there was a story of Harry Edwards where he had received a letter from a lady in Australia who was in a hospital bed, and he sent her healing remotely. When she visited England, she recognized him because she saw him sat next to her bed while she was receiving the healing. And spiritualism, there are stories like that all over the place. So it's absolutely possible that I think a medium can remotely work. It's just mediumship needs to develop a lot further before we can enter into that kind of level of connection, because I think we need to perfect it as it is now and then develop it further. But I'm sure there are many people working privately who have got many examples of doing a reading and finding that the person that they gave a reading for remotely will have seen them somewhere during the day, or one thing I know is you can never put a limit on what's possible. Some of the things I've experienced have just blown my mind. So whatever people tell me, I've got an open mind these days. But remote viewing is definitely very possible, but I would put some serious cautions in there as well.
So really good context, and I love the example of remote viewing, because of course we know about the power of prayer and intention and affirmations, and being able to send that remotely. And Harry Edwards used to talk about it being almost as powerful as being in person if it's done right, because you're quite literally acting as the medium for that energy. I think you also make a really good point about we are teaching people to be cautious, sticking your head into the internet for the first time, or going onto a chat room. You're putting yourself on offer, you're raising your head above the parapet, and the higher you go up to raise your head above the parapet, the bigger the picture you may see, but more people can see you. So I think there's a really good thing there about protecting and grounding yourself. And actually anyone working at any level, I hope you'd agree with me that it's important to have some discipline and some training or education around that, and a good circle leader, people sort of telling you what to do, because people can work and they can also dabble with these gifts, but actually
it's so tempting. We really got to forgive ourselves for making mistakes, because we're only human, and it's so tempting to do, especially if you've got an ex-partner and you want to know how they're getting on. It's so easy to just let your mind wander, that having a good teacher to teach you discipline when it comes to these things is really essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And I drew two cards for you, Rebecca. One of them was a decision card, yes. So I drew a second card. Okay. The other one was the puzzle around a decision and a challenge. So I definitely saw you at sort of a transitional period where you were sort of buzzled between the two decisions to make, and yes, was something you were looking for. Unless, of course, the caveat you're asking about doing something illegal or immoral or dangerous, you're going to hurt someone. The answer was yes, but I think you may have possibly gone offline now. We were just saying, Rebecca. But if you are still with us and you've heard the answer to that question, hopefully other people have found that answer fascinating. Lacey is coming with the next question, and she's talking about being that she's been meditating for a while, but everything is black. Is this normal? And I don't see any visuals. Been trying to get some signs or messages from my dear nanny. So I'll let Stephen actually come in first, but I'll just throw in the fact black is in itself something, isn't it? Black is not nothing. So black in itself is still a color. So you've seen a color. Stephen, any thoughts on what Lacey just said there?
Well, I think because it's very difficult, because I thought that everyone was the same and I was just very poor at being a human being. And all I can understand now is that everyone is totally different. I mean, the fact that someone who's colorblind can't see the same color as someone who isn't just shows that our minds are projecting most of what we see. And when it comes to, individuals have a completely different experience, but spiritualism is where we overlap with each other and we can all agree on fundamentals. But what one person is capable of compared to another. I'm very clairvoyant. I'm not very clairaudient, and I started off being more clairvoyant and clairsentient. Now I'm developing more clairaudience. It's changed, and my whole attitude and outlook has changed. The medium that I was 10 years ago is nothing like I am now. Whether there's an improvement or not, it's not really an improvement. It's just a change and a shift. And so I think that's probably happened to me several times. It's very hard to judge where you are and how you work, because some people are so much more empathetic, and some people are so much more critical of facts, and I'm somewhere in between the two myself. So it's quite hard to visualize someone else's perspective because we are all so unique.
Yeah, and everyone's got their own individual journey, haven't they? So try and find yourself a good circle leader, Lacey. I think that's brilliant. Head over to SBTV UK. There's a great directory there of you. Find your local spiritualist church or centre, and if you can, try and attend something face to face. I think you've got an opportunity there.
I also think that we've, because myself as well, I thought I'm so poor at meditating, and I didn't realise how much time I spent on my own thinking. I get more time than most people, because a lot of the people that were coming to meditate, they are so busy through the day that's the only time they get 10 minutes to themselves. Whereas I get a good 2 hours every morning and at least 3 hours every evening, just on my own with my thoughts. And that is the greatest meditation. So when I'm sat trying to get visualizations from the spirit world, what I miss is the fact that I'm blessed with all this time. I get 5 hours a day meditation. I just didn't realize that's what it was. So I think sometimes when we're trying so hard to meditate, we can miss the fact that we slip in and out of altered states of consciousness all the time. And it's just being aware at the time that you can, taking that time to talk to your loved ones in the spirit world and make that link a little bit stronger rather than just getting lost in your own thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I still struggle now. I mean, I'm 40 and I've been involved in spiritualism my entire life. I struggle to follow a guided meditation. I like this at the moment of stillness. I've also got 3 young boys and a busy sort of permanent job and life, and it's hard to find that time. But I like the idea of the so I won't go into the graphic detail, but sometimes just going to the toilet for a couple of minutes is an opportunity for that time on my own and my own thoughts. And we'll just give a quick reading to her as well. And I got this sort of sense of voyage. And I said, I instinctively said about finding a local church and centre. I know in your profile photo there you're cuddling a baby, and you don't have to tell us whether that's your baby or not. But also was being told that perhaps not the right time to have a consistent approach around discipline of a circle. You said thank you that it all made sort of perfect sense. But I do think you're on a journey, and I want to say it's a journey of attunement, that your own spiritual awakening is still happening. But you are the captain of the ship. You decide when to stop next and when to carry on and when to explore. So know that you're in charge, and all of this can happen at your own routine. Stephen, anything from you for Lacey?
Well, first I was seeing a red book, and then it went further. It's Carl Gustav Jung, the famous psychologist, and he wrote a red book. But I think she's going to find a lot of inspiration and a lot of her questions answered through Carl Jung and his psychology. I think he's very closely linked with spiritualism in a lot of senses, and especially astrology. So I'm getting the feeling this lady's going to be very closely linked to that philosophy, and we'll learn a lot from it.
And yeah, she was given confirmation about the four children. So yeah, I have some empathy with you. But well done on 4. I'm still not entirely convinced. I mean, the universe will have its way. It will have its way. But from a conversation point of view, my wife and I sometimes feel like I'm struggling to keep three boys alive that seem to be into everything, wanting to climb everything. But I'm pleased that I am keeping them alive and well, and they're doing well. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Lacey, for sort of giving us that sort of next point. Keep your questions coming, folks, because it's all on topic. It's all on theme. And Stephen, I gave the opportunity to sort of pick our subject matter today, and Stephen started telling us a little bit about his personal life and how he got into spiritualism. But Stephen, from a sort of point of where you're working at now, I describe myself as a spiritualist medium, medium counselor and celebrant now. How would you sort of describe you within the spiritualism movement? I'm recognizing that labels are of course private anyway, but you can then segue into a little bit of the transformation aspect, and we'll take our next question afterwards.
Well, I'm quite happy with spiritualist medium. I avoid the word psychic because although every medium has to be psychic, not every psychic's a medium. But I can only see my psychic abilities in hindsight, and it's usually by accident. Like, why did I missed my turning on the motorway? I ended up going 20 miles out of the way, get really annoyed, arrive home late, and then I find out later on that there was a crash just a few minutes after on the road I would have been on had I not come off on the slip road. So in hindsight, I saw that spirit would nudge me the right way. I didn't exactly leave work going, oh, at 8:05 there's going to be an accident, I better come off the motorway. It's only afterwards I realised how well I've been guided. Do you know what I mean? So I avoid the term psychic, but on reflection, I'm very lucky. Do you know what I mean? And I can thank spirit for it. And now I'm a bit more aware. Sometimes I know when it's spirit nudging me, but on the whole, I'd say I'm a spiritualist medium. And I don't know, putting any other label on it seems a bit weird. I'm quite happy with that one. I know there's a lot more to who we are than just spiritualists or just mediums, but I love, sorry if I go on a little bit, but in Hislop, he did an interview and some journalists were trying to mock his faith in Christianity. And they asked him what he was. He goes, well, I don't know what I am, but I know I'm C of E. So I'm not really sure what I am, but I know it's a lot like other spiritualist mediums.
Yeah, I mean, a nice way of putting it. Shelley was just asking a question here about some tell that the devil can manifest as a vision of your loved ones, and therefore we must not try to communicate. What do you think? I'll just say, always beware of imposters in any type of communication. Should have a verified communicator. So, Stephen and I just talking about being spiritualist mediums. I was working at a beautiful church in Woking last night. And for me, before a message is allowed, the communicator has to verify himself. So I give 2 or 3 bits of information, and then the person receiving the message must say, yeah, I know who that person is. So there's that idea of, manifestations. And of course, if someone's truly an imposter, perhaps they would know enough about a personality. So you continue to look into what's going on, right now. We also know that when you get stories like this of the devil and manifestations, that there are contradictory stories in the Bible and other sort of historical documents. It talks about Jesus working with the spiritual gift of mediumship. It says it's absolutely possible. Then a few chapters later it says and don't do it. And so all of these things are different people's opinions and interpretations of what's going on. But I mentioned Woking. I don't know if you've ever worked there, Stephen, but next door to the beautiful church of Woking is another branch of Christianity who have some very strong opinions, similar lines to what Shelley's been told. So as I'm sat in the medium room preparing myself, finding the power, I suddenly hear this guy right outside the window sort of, oh, Almighty God, help this sinner go to the fiery pits of hell, and blah blah blah. So I sort of stood up. My guide team were there, and they, oh bless him. So I stood up, and although there was a wall with a piece of glass between us, I turned and faced the window, and I said, come on, Mother, Father, God, help this lost one find his true purpose. Help him to truly understand and interpret the voices in the head that think he needs to send me to the fiery pits of hell are indeed the same spirit friends, guides, and inspirers that are with me. And he was like, I'm praying for you. And I was like, and I'm praying for you too, brother. All will be well. And I think that, it's his opinion. And he might have been angry that I wasn't angry with him. But, I'm going to send love his way that he might find. And I admire his passion. Apparently, this guy does it every single Thursday outside Woking. That's quite dedication. We don't always get that from the congregation.
And at least he is standing by his convictions and he's willing to make himself look silly.
Yeah.
Which
passionate.
But this is the subject that I love the most in a way, because it was what scared the bejesus out of me standing up on a platform, that someone far more learned than me was going to stand up and make me look silly by picking up a piece of paper and going, there, look, there's the evidence against what you're doing. This conclusively proves it's a load of rubbish. And that piece of paper does not exist. I totally understand. And like I was saying about the scientific argument where they use James Randi, the only other argument is, says in the Bible you shouldn't talk to a medium. And I'm like, okay, let's go have a look at that little piece in the Bible. Okay, and it's in Deuteronomy, I forget the exact chapter or verse, it said you should not go seek a medium. It doesn't say mediumship's a load of rubbish. And we've got to put this into context. The Bible is a book of mediumship, about mediumship, by mediums. Every single one of them was engaging in mediumship from start to finish. Moses was a medium. The book of Deuteronomy, there are 613 commandments in Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus, and they are mostly on how these people were going to live in the desert, erect their tent, show their festivals. And I mean, we haven't got enough time to go too deeply into it, but nearly everything has been explained to me by different people and philosophers and through my own thoughts. And where it's quite ambiguous language. And I came away from reading that little bit in Deuteronomy about not seeking out a medium, and I totally agreed with it. None of us should be seeking out a medium, because communion with our ancestors should be so natural that we don't need a third party. And I totally agree with that commandment. And when someone tries to bring up that argument from Deuteronomy, all I can do is agree wholeheartedly with them. But we agree in principle, but not in practice. The spiritualist movement, when it first came around, it was quite right that scientists went in to discover whether it was legitimate or not, because they were protecting the public from charlatans and frauds. 180 years later, the devil has not used spiritualism to his best advantage. If anything, we can go back to the Bible. Jesus said, you know a tree by its fruits. And the fruits of spiritualism are very sweet. I've not come across any real sour apples. Maybe the movement has a few organizations that people don't like, and there can be a little bit of falling out, but generally we don't need exorcisms in spiritualism. We have a lot of healing and a lot of good has been done. When it comes to the false hope, I've not actually seen anyone remortgage their house based on what a medium's told them. I'm sure it happens, and I'm sure there's some very poor practice out there. But as far as I'm concerned, in churches, the standard of mediumship could be a little bit better, but on the whole, they're run in such a way that the negative aspects are dealt with very well and very easily. And people with schizophrenia and mental health problems, even they can receive healing, even if spiritual development might not be for them. So 180 years later, and the arguments against spiritualism have not only fallen away, the people that are now suppressing the truth are actually holding the collective consciousness back by suppressing spiritualism. Those scientists who were against it in the early days, I would have supported them wholeheartedly, because I would have been worried about charlatans. But 180 years later, we've got to look at the facts. It hasn't caused any harm. It's done a lot of good, and it continues to do so. And not only have we got the scientific background to fall back on, We can show ordinary people whose lives have been improved considerably by the knowledge that we not only carry on, but there's so much more to it, and opening our mind up to the fact that we live in a greater world, that we're in the spirit world already. It's not a room somewhere else. It's not another life. It's the life we're already living now. We're just occupying this physical body to experience the earthly side of it. But our connection with God, our connection with our loved ones is eternal. And we shouldn't have to wait until we die before we engage with that. And spiritualism, like I say, show me where it's done harm.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any. It's just done a lot of good.
Really lovely answer, and Shelley said it was far better than she expected, which I think is great verification. We give you a quick reading as well, Shelley. I just wanted to add, I don't know how much you've seen the show, but I'm bringing up my three boys, spiritualist and Catholic. They go to a Catholic primary school. My wife's got Irish family. We were in Ireland recently, and I think it's all absolutely compatible. And when I first met, my wife's family about 23 years ago, and they had similar questions because of that Catholic sort of upbringing. And actually, no one within Catholicism had ever said it's impossible to do. Again, it was this sort of caution of you shouldn't do it or don't do it. And I've seen so many wonderful stories of lords and saints within Catholicism. Actually, when you use 2023 sort of terminology and the word medium, it all makes sense. Think about a wonderful place like Lourdes and the Holy Water. It's a great story of someone whose guide team presented them evidence of life after life, and we had people from the spirit world come down and say how important this place was, and that person may have been actually the mother of Jesus, an ascended master himself, and a wonderful person herself. And for me, mediumship still exists in the Church of England and within Catholicism. It's been controlled. And if you think about Roman Catholic at the very sort of start of Christianity, there was an element of control of the people, and they weren't putting everything in a language that people could understand, because they wanted people to come into a building and worship in that building together as a community, so they could keep an eye on people, see where they were and what they were up to. And there's an element of the man-made sort of side of religion to do that. And therefore, actually, if everyone can work with the spiritual gifts, which Jesus, who I think was an incredible leader, used to talk about, everyone can work with these gifts of healing and mediumship. It's almost an element of bearing in mind that Christianity didn't exist when Jesus was alive, came afterwards, after he'd been crucified and executed. That people said, actually, we don't want you to work with all the gifts. You need to come into the church. It's only the chosen ones that can do this. You think about Henry VIII and the fact that we're about to bring in King Charles, God's chosen person on earth. There's still a big element around control and authority, and I think that therefore religion does have compatibility. Is absolutely compatible. I also think that spiritualism, we talked about the Foster Sisters a minute ago, it was built on the building blocks of Christianity, Church of England and Catholicism, because that was people's understanding 180 years ago. So, it's like if this were a cheesecake, spiritualism is almost like the flavoring which has been added to the biscuit base of Christianity. And therefore, there are bits of it that are absolutely ring true to now. Some of those stories 2,000-3,000 years old, still absolutely fantastic. But, really good example, Stephen. And Shelley, I'll let Stephen give you a couple of words, but I drew a card for you, which was around friendship. And this card here, you've got the people in the tavern, they're having a couple of beers, there's some wines, there's some liquors in the background. But actually for me, there's an exotic bird in the background. I'm not going to call you an exotic bird, Shelley, but there's this element of something exotic, something fruity. And the important thing here, we've got the two people, we've got the friend, we've got someone putting a hand on the shoulder. It's all about that communion. It's about the sharing, love, intimacy, togetherness, all of that being really, really important. And as I was sort of saying, I had this velvet divorce between separation. So there was this sort of want and this desire for that intimacy, that friendship, that companionship, you being a good friend. And I felt that there was something like this velvet divorce. There was an element of separation and some anxiety around someone missing perhaps from a friendship group. That was what I was just picking up for you. Stephen, anything you'd like to add for Shelley?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if the name Shelley is actually named after the poet, but what I'm getting is it's beautiful handwriting, beautiful words, a real sense of poetry. I feel a lady who's got, synesthesia, where if you you can hear the days of the week, but each day is a different color and taste. You know, it's a very, and I feel this lady, Shelley, is a very has synesthesia and really has a very poetic and a very flighty nature. So hopefully I'm describing it right the way I'm feeling it. But I really want to pick up a pen, piece of paper, and do this beautiful poetry with very ornate letters and a very artistic side. And I feel this is more spiritually inspired, you know, and developing as we speak. So I think Shelley, I'm getting given it. You just got to get that pen and paper out and stop doubting your poetry. I don't know if that's completely right, but I think right now, especially, you're finding the words, and as spring turns into summer, and you're going to be outdoors in nature a lot more, the words are just going to come rolling through your mind and off your tongue. So get them down on paper as they do, because you'll forget them otherwise.
Brilliant. Lovely words, Stephen, and I really loved your answer. So lovely. Orla says, do loved ones age when they pass away? I just want to, I'm going to let Stephen come in and give a more detailed answer, but yeah, I think they can, or they can stay the same age, or they can get younger. They can reproduce
this is a very strange one. One of the most beautiful but also very challenging things about spiritualism is that young ones, babies, or even those that never quite reached the earth plane, quite often they carry on growing up in the spirit world. We don't know why, we don't have the answers. All we know is that it's a fact. I've seen it so many times, and I've got friends in the spirit world and family in the spirit world, and they can come in different guises at different times. I have a guide that mostly comes as a very aged, learned old gentleman. But when he comes as a young warrior, he means business. And each time he comes in a different age or a different style, it's because he's giving a different energy. When he comes as an old man to give philosophy, it's usually he's coming with that wisdom. But on the few occasions he's come as a young man, he's come with his war face on because he wants me to get stuck into something. So the age thing in spirit, time and space go out the window when working with spirit. And what you've got to look at is sometimes a medium will give a message from a loved one in the spirit world. Certain words are used, and they might talk about something that's completely off your mind because they want to change the way you're looking at something. So quite often the way they come to you and the things they say is because they want you to think like, so my grandfather, sometimes he'll come from a medium as a young man around my age in his 40s, because he wants me to look back at his life when he was in his 40s and take some guidance for my 40s from that. But I only learned that through my experience in spiritualism, because at first I was a bit bewildered because my grandfather was coming through at different ages. I was worried that that wasn't my grandfather. And although we're going back to answering the previous question, one of the ways you know for sure that it's not the devil is because if the devil, as far as we all know about the devil, he's a deceiver and a liar. And the one thing he cannot fake is true love. And when you feel the love of a grandmother for their grandchild, I don't think the devil can fake that. I think that's genuine. If you're not feeling that love, then question it, question it, question it. But if you feel that heartfelt connection and you feel that love coming from the spirit world, I don't think you can go wrong. And you know, and they will influence you with what you need at that time.
Lovely. And yeah, and Orla's saying yes. The card I drew for you, Orla, was this one here. It's the Tower. Okay, and you see this beautiful tower standing at the top of an old sort of hill fort there, and there's this element of fortification. But I want to talk about achievement. Okay, and I'm proud. I am very proud of you, and I want to sort of celebrate this at the top of the hill fort because I want everyone in the kingdom to see the Queen in the tower. There's this real sense of recognition and of achievement, and there was also an element of arrogance outside the tower and pride inside the tower, and this sort of pride coming towards the top of it. The defense and fortification of the tower, I think, is quite important as well. The walls, the elevation, the opportunity to see the big picture, and the sort of defenses are up. You are there, and it's okay to therefore be a little bit more vulnerable, because you aren't actually vulnerable inside the defense of the tower, but there's something about your inner self allowing yourself to be a bit more vulnerable, and to recognize that sense of achievement and pride. So hopefully that card makes some sense for you. Stephen, anything for Orla?
Yes, I've got a gentleman with me, and I feel like a guy, but he's shouting at me. He's going, how do I say this? I feel it might be quite personal and to do with love life, or what this gentleman's telling me is you have a lot of interests and you have built up a little bit of a wall around yourself, and you've built this little castle around, and you're quite happy in it, and you're not letting too many people in. And this gentleman's telling me that's fine, but if they can't get in, you can't get out, and not to close yourself off to the world. I feel that you've done this as a self-defense mechanism, self-preservation. You're just keeping your heart and your emotions yours for now. And he's making me feel that's all well and good, but you need to share yourself with the world a little bit more. And you have been lately. Well, I'm feeling about this sort of closed-in situation. You did it with the right intentions, but now you're getting out in life a little bit more and you're experiencing a lot more. And he's very pleased with you. He wants you to get out there and share yourself with the world, knowing full well that you're not going to get fooled. I think you were a bit apprehensive at first because you're a very, not gullible person, but you like to see the best in people, and you've been disappointed a few times. And this gentleman's telling me, well, you've built this tower, but there is a door. You need to step out of this and into the world a little bit more often, because people, he's making me feel like it's about time people got to see you the way you are, and you've grown up a lot and you've got a lot to share. And he's telling me that it's about time. So lots of love to you from this gentleman. It feels more like a guide, but I feel like a grandfather, more on father's side. But this gentleman has got a very wicked tongue and has used some very choice language, and I've been very careful not to repeat what he was telling me. But he's saying, go for it, girl. Just get out there and do it.
Good luck and best wishes to you all. A lovely message there, Stephen. Thanks, folks, and keep your questions coming, folks. It's been great to talk to you all about our own sort of experiences, and I think that although Stephen and I use different language and our own sort of collection of thoughts, what you have there is bits of the jigsaw. You add your bits and you sort of get your picture from it. So Angela was just saying, what are your thoughts on tech devices used to connect Talk with Spirit, spirit boxes, SLS cameras, etc.? I mean, Angela, for me, they're tools. In the same way the Ouija board was a tool for the Victorians, the wall was a tool for the Fox sisters, the rappings, the tappings, and the knockings. And if tools are useful and they add some value, then absolutely great. I think a lot of the tech I've seen, particularly a lot of the free tech and the software, it's all a bit of a gimmick, and it's not actually really doing anything at all. And I've seen so-called digital Ouija boards and stuff like that. They're all programmed and algorithms, and always look for the supernormal before the supernatural. And on this show, Richard, our producer, has programmed an artificial intelligence bot to read tarot cards, and there's nothing fraudulent about it, but it's not spirit communication. It's it's algorithms and it's sort of lines of code. I like the spirit box, and I love the way that spirit can use some of the frequencies in the radio to pull that from the air in order to communicate. But again, in the same way you get white noise and electronic voice phenomenon, it's about testing the communicator, verifying who it is, and also recognizing that everything's energy, including white noise, cameras, spirit boxes. Is there a level of intelligence in this communicator? And in the same way the Fox sisters did, establishing who it is, evidencing who they are, and moving on. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, this is the universal principles of spiritualism will be true no matter what the technology. And like you say, they're testing the spirit's validity. And it can be very difficult to explain, but also very easy to explain. There's what the spirit person is sharing with the medium. There's what the spirit person shares with the recipient of the message. And then there's what the medium and the recipient share. Well, the medium and the recipient share is a psychic energy. And where they cross over, so if I say, oh, actually, I've got your granddad here and he's telling me he used to drive a Rover, blah, 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 blah. These are all memories that you can confirm because I could just be getting them psychically from your thoughts. So if the spirit person gives information that you don't know anything about, we can go and confirm it at a later date. And it happened after that person died, that's good mediumship. And that will be true regardless of the technology. But like you say, I think the mediumship comes hand in hand with the technology. Morse code was around before the Fox sisters. These young girls, they understood Morse code. They knew that they can go to the next town to the post office, write a message, and it will be sent in Morse code through electricity and raps and taps, received on the other side. Then we see more clairaudience, trance work, and physical phenomena, and then it dies down and comes into more clairvoyant. And this hand in hand, you've got the raps and taps of Morse code through radio, the wireless, telephone, and then television, film. And now, I mean, the internet, we can just download information from the cloud. That's one of the best examples of mediumship I can give. We're just downloading packets of data from the cloud. And again, if we put the spiritualist perspective on it for evidential mediumship and hold it against that lens, it doesn't matter what the technology is, we can still use those universal truths to prove whether it's our loved ones or not. And I think with where artificial intelligence, digital implants going into the physical body, right now the phone is in your hand. The next step is it's under the skin. And I'm absolutely petrified, but also excited about how that's going to go. I don't think we're going to stop it, but I don't think it's going to stop spiritualism. If anything, I think when that happens, and there's a very interesting guy in the States called Reiko as well, he gives the date of 2029. That seems to be when the technology is going to be implanted in the human being. I would worry about it if I didn't have such confidence in the spirit world. The creation can never outstrip its creator. And the cosmic consciousness that we can connect to as spiritualists will always be far greater than any artificial intelligence. It cannot outstrip us because we are its creator. And those fears that you might hear from these talking heads on TV, I just smile because something tells me it's all going to be all right.
Right. I love your answers, Stephen, and you've been a fantastic guest tonight. Angela, I drew a card for you as well, and this card is money. You've got the guy in the end of the field there working really hard. You know, it's a winter's day, all the leaves have gone in the trees. Right in this foreground is the treasure or the money ready to be picked up. And I want to talk about the fact that, as a result of hard work, as a result of good luck, as a result of inheritance, money is there. There's also this need. I had a lady communicating with me claiming to be family, Angela. She was talking about being a mother and a grandmother on your dad's side of the family. And she was talking about the fact that she wants to put a couple of quid in your pocket. And Angela, I don't know if you're in the UK, you understand what I say by a couple of quid. I know we've got a few people across the pond today. So money, we want to put some money in your purse. And this lady that was claiming to be on dad's side of the family, that's mother and grandmother, she also gave me the letter D, D for Delta. She was talking about symbolic, that D would be symbolic to you and her, and also this anniversary of April, the month that we're in now. And I want to go back only 7 or 8 days, no more than 9, around a significant sort of anniversary that she was just talking about. So keep on keeping on. We'll try and put a few more pounds in your purse, Angela. She loved your answer there, Steve, as well. She was saying brilliant, true. But anything else you would like to ask or add for her, Stephen?
Yeah, is when you talk about money, and I'll just the word inheritance came through my mind before you even said it, and I feel that there is
consciousness.
If this hasn't already come, that there is a little bit, and I feel it's more of, again, I'm working with grandfathers this evening, and you said grandmother on father's side. I feel again grandfather on father's side, but I feel Italian influence coming with this, and I feel I want to go back, and it's a shame that. I'm feeling it's a shame they couldn't pass down the land in the family. It wasn't a lot, but you're obviously quite far removed from them, and somehow this property was lost in the process. But I feel this gentleman would love it if you understood your heritage a little bit more, because I feel we can go quite far back. And I feel in the sort of central to northern Italian regions with this gentleman, but I feel a lot of humour. And I know it's a cliche, but I want to do this with my hand. A really expressive Italian man I've got with me. So lots of love. Hope you can take that.
Great, thank you. Beautiful message again, Stephen and Angela. I hope that makes all good sense to you. I think what we're going to probably do now, folks, is just to tell you a little bit more about some of the other things available via SPTV, both on the website, some of the shows. There's a new variety of cast and hosts, lots of new shows going on, and some of the shows that have been going for a while under sort of a new format, including the relaunch of the broadcasted service from Women and Spiritualist Church, my home church, on Sunday mornings. I think 21st of May is our first next opportunity to do that. So Richard, do you want to run the adverts now?
My Spiritual Designs, ethical creativity for spiritual people. myspiritualdesigns.com, a new service offering graphic and website designs, along with video animations for those who serve Spirit in their own way. We can create promotional videos with voiceovers and music, and custom-made apps. There are no monthly or yearly fees. No off-the-shelf solutions, all personalized to match your own unique vision. Our website deals offer your very own online events, service booking system which accepts PayPal and Stripe payments, a contact form, gallery, and video player. Our website deals starts from as little as £150 up to only £210. For more details, please visit myspiritualdesigns.com.
myspiritualdirectory.com is one of the fastest growing online free listing service. Our search directory offers geolocation feature, rating ability, review system, map location, customer comment, YouTube video, gallery, social media sharing, direct contact with the lister, simple online booking and payment system. It's free to register and use. It even creates your own mini web page, which you can update at any time, and yes, it's still free, no monthly or yearly fees. 100% free. Creates your own profile page. Add social media and other links. Add a mini gallery and a YouTube video. Rating, reviews and comments. Includes online booking and payments. So, if you're looking for a medium or a reader, even a church, maybe a healer, or any other spiritual service, then visit myspiritualdirectory.com.
Join Kirsty Wright, the intuitive reader, on Thursday, May the 4th from 12 p.m, offering spiritual guidance, support and readings in her new show only on SPTV.
Welcome back. Thanks for paying attention to some of the new things going on. And actually, Stephen and I were just sort of chatting in between the adverts, and of course taking note of all the fantastic things going on. But Stephen, I think you could share this with everybody, what you were just sort of talking about, similarities in Catholicism.
Yeah, well, it's a few years ago. There's an article. I wish I could find it again. But yeah, you had the girls in Portugal who had the visions of the Virgin Mary at Fatima. And on the basis of that, there was a lot that is still to be revealed. But over the years, the Catholic Church has actually not just recognized that people have spiritual and psychic phenomena, but actually we should be encouraged to let it flow and to engage with it. And so people with if a priest has in the Catholic Church, has someone come to them with psychic experiences, and not to just dismiss them or pray for them, actually encourage them to explain it and learn it, because even today they're accepting that people are receiving visions of the Virgin Mary, of Jesus, of their loved ones in the spirit world, and there's spiritualism has shown it's genuine. So even the Catholic Church a few years ago, they might not have published it throughout the media, but they've accepted that psychic phenomena is real and that we should be encouraged to learn and to practice it properly rather than just dismiss it. So things are really changing. It might not be broadcast on television, but even in the Catholic Church, the doors are opening to psychic phenomena. So it's an interesting time.
That's really good. And the other thing we were just talking about is that Women of Spiritualist Church. You're talking about when you sat in the sanctuary and seeing some of the sort of pictures of spiritual ambassadors, and just sort of on this subject and transformation. I wanted to mention Vale Owen, Reverend Vale, George Vale Owen. So the sanctuary you're in is actually named the George Vale Owen Sanctuary, and there's a picture of him in there. Reverend Owen actually consecrated the ground at Women of Spiritualist Church about 100 years ago, and the reason I sort of mentioned him about this subject, so he started off his life as Reverend in the Church of England, and he found as part of studies and research he did that spiritualism was absolutely compatible with the Church of England. And following the passing of his mother to the spirit world, he became more sort of psychic and working more with those gifts of mediumship himself, and really wanted to promote and bring the two together, but actually was under huge pressure from the Church of England to not do that, to actually say that we don't want people to say that spiritualism is people should be going to spiritual churches. We only want them to come to the Church of England churches. In the end, the Church of England actually forced him out. He was forced, I think it was 1950s at that point, whereas it was about 1909, something like that. I think his mother had passed away. So after a long period of time, they said, off you go. And he actually lost his principal source of income. But he'd written a load of lovely books around spiritual. I think it was I wish my dad was in. It was Lifting the Veil of something or other, and in doing so, he was able to contextualize it for lots of people that had Christianity as a sort of foundation to their religion, and why spiritualism was compatible. So another wonderful ambassador for spiritualism. We were blessed that he was actually one of the people that consecrated the ground at Wimbledon. But I know his books were picked up by the author of Sherlock Holmes, the books whose name I've forgotten now as well. I should really write these things down. Trouble with my dyslexia. That's it, Conan Doyle. I've just got dyslexia. My memory, my short-term memory in particular, is a nightmare, and that really sort of took them to a new audience.
Well, his books are brilliant because they're one of the examples where the spirit world has described the spirit world just after the passing in as good detail as possible, and there's a number of them. So his books are very similar to, say, Allan Kardec, Spiritism, where through his questions and answers with his spirit communicators, he's built up an idea. So the several communicators describe how they experience the spirit world after their death or their transition, and you get a picture of how the spirit world that you experience after you die is partly a culmination of your thoughts and your state of mind at the time, but there is this other sense that it is an actual place that you are going to, with a shared experience with people who've passed before you have. And through his books, it paints a picture. And sometimes watching a film, you'll get in the director's perspective, but when you read a book, your mind is painting the picture itself and can be guided in a much deeper way. So Vale Owen's books are fantastic for that reason. Very similar to, say, Allan Kardec or even Silver Birch's questions and answers, because in your mind you're building up your experience as well, and you're building your spirit world in a sense, so that when you step into the spirit world, it's already going to be familiar to you.
Great, and really good answer. Martina asks about angel numbers or mirror numbers, and I'm gonna confess that this isn't an area of expertise. My wife's actually fascinated with numbers, neurology, and the sort of study of that. As a medium, every now and then, angel numbers or mirror numbers pop up in messages. I'm making this up. No, I'm not. I was going to make up an example, and actually, I just had someone with me and said, "No, give her this." So Martina, I've got a man that's just come to me, and he said, "No, actually, give us something specific." So this man claiming to know, he's talking about being families or mum's side of the family. I think it was dad to mum, so she granddad and mum's side of the family, and he's talking about last night at 3:33 in the morning. 3:33. Now, there's something about you waking up and seeing that, looking at the time and seeing the 333, and this is something that's come up again, and you would understand the significance of that. And he's saying to me last night, and I do hope that is true, and you'll come back and say that. But the whole point of it, when I pick it up mediumshiply, if you like, is that often with numbers, they're more aware to us when they appear in patterns. So at 331, would it have been as significant to you as 333? So did spirit, wait patiently, knowing that you're about to wake up, and inspired you to look at the clock at that time to see the 333s? But if you're really fascinated about this, there's loads of really good articles and stuff online where you can talk about angel numbers. And for people that haven't got a clue what we're talking about, it's any sort of repetitive or sequence of numbers, 111, 333, 222, etc. And every number has significance. My wife always spots patterns, and she was always fascinated, with little things like, for instance, my birthday's on the 29th. Our firstborn was on the 28th. She was born on the 31st. We then had another son who was born on the 30th, and the idea of this sort of sequence of numbers coming up, and she always sort of sees those patterns. Anything from you, Stephen?
Well, a very skeptical guy I was working with the other day, he turned around and goes, I don't agree with everything you believe in, obviously. He goes, but every time I pick my phone up, it's either 222 or 111. I just smiled. I went, welcome to the Illuminati. And he just laughed at me. He went, but I literally, I kid you not, suspend your disbelief, but a few years ago, I was at work. It was a Monday morning, and I got handed the keys to a van by a guy I was working with. And he said, Steve, I've got to take this to the dealership. It's got to get fixed and pick up a hire van. But I had a skinful last night and I'm still drunk. Can you take it? And I was really pissed off, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it. I'm driving it there, and I had to record the mileage. So I've pulled over and I've recorded the mileage 22222. I thought, oh, that's odd. I hand the keys over. They give me the keys to a hire vehicle, and I'm driving back. My phone's ringing, so I pull over into the car park, answer the phone. It's my boss, and he said, I need you to give me the mileage of the new van before, because I've got to go out to the office. And then I'd look around and the van says 11111. My jaw hit the floor, and I've just dropped a van off at 22222, and it's 11111. And I was like, well, what does this mean? So a few days go by and nothing significant really happened. But looking back now, that was a very transitional time in my life, where I just started working as a medium on the platform, and I just sort of moved away from my old life and started a new one. So sometimes those numbers come up and they don't seem obvious instantly, but looking back, it'll probably be a very important part of your life. But yeah, I mean, when those things happen to you, it's quite hard to explain them to other people, but to you, they mean something.
Yeah, they're significant. And the power of Google, Martina and others, you can literally Google, what does 222 mean? And there'll be 4 or 5 different interpretations that pop right up the top of Google and other things. But look for the wider significance. And as an experiment, I just done that. And there was loads of websites that come up. The 333 talks about spirit working closely with you to help co-create your life. Adding 333 is all about creation. And then another website said that 3 is a nod to creative expression, imagination, warmth from friendliness. And another website said your guides are lending a boost to manifesting juju, to take 333 as a loving sign to keep moving forward. So 4 different websites, 4 different sort of meanings of the 333. It might have been, as I said, that someone was just trying to make it significant so that you remembered the dream state or the element before. So look for the meaning of those things. I hope you understood your communicator and your message as well. Okay, right. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So Vianello, I found Tracy Vianello. Producers like, stick to Tracy. Tracy, how does one see auras? Sorry if you've asked this before, I'm late on tonight. No worry, it's not been asked this evening. Sometimes you'll see them with your eyes. like the Ready Brek Glow. Always think about that as being a bit of an aura on the Ready Brek cereal for those in the UK. Other times you might see it with the mind's eye. Other times you might feel it. They used to talk about feeling Buddha's aura, miles apart from where he is. Other people spoke about Jesus, and we've been split a lot, haven't we, about the links between major religions, Christianity, Catholic churches. Look at the stained glass and look at the auras that are often written almost like angelic sort of things above them. So halos. I think all of that is sort of linked about people sort of portraying sort of wider selves than what the physical being is possible. For me, it's often about the seeing of sort of colors. And the feeling of colors, and like the lady that's talking about meditation and seeing black, black in itself has a significance and a meaning. Stephen, what do you think?
I'd say seeing the aura in the mind's eye is healthy. Seeing it objectively as if it's around someone, I don't know if that's that particularly healthy, because I think we have to separate the internal experience from the external one. Otherwise, they can get muddled. I only say that because I've known a few people who've had some very difficult experiences, mental health problems, and they were very objective in the way they saw spirit. But at the same time, I see it very subtly, but when I see the aura almost objectively, very powerfully, it can be quite disturbing because it really is radiating. And if someone is in full flow, and when I see a medium, especially a divine service of worship, and they're talking about philosophy, something close to their heart or an experience they've had, the whole aura around their crown lights up just like a halo for me. Beautiful, bright like the sun. And the first time I started experiencing that, I was actually a little bit shocked. I didn't realize I had that ability. But as for controlling it and turning it on and off, I find that can be very much like mediumship. It's up and down. But the best thing to do is, if you want to see the aura around someone's forehead, around their skull, is to look at their nose or their chin, because the minute you look at the aura, it goes away. But when you're distracted and you're looking elsewhere, you got a better chance of seeing that veil around the person's presence and the colors that come with it. So that's a very good practice, is to look at the nose, and then you'll see the aura around the skull. But the minute you try to focus on the aura, it just vanishes.
Another fantastic answer, Stephen, and I drew a quick card for you, Tracy. This card is like the lion. We've got the jester there. He's on 1 foot. And there's a couple of symbolic things I just want to point out. So he's on 1 foot, and by the bottom of his foot is a purse that someone's dropped. He's holding up a replica of himself, and he's holding up a mask in his hand too. And in doing so, I want to talk about the fact there are moments in our life where we have to put on a mask, and that we don't feel that we can be truly authentic. And there's an element that I'm being told about in your life at the moment when you don't feel you can bring all of you to the situation. There's an element of putting up a mask. I want to say a corporate mask. There's something that links to profession here, and you feel that you're almost deceiving yourself in not being able to be truly authentic and sort of stick to your values. But this elastic feeling to be more at yourself, to bring all of you to work, I think, is that powerful intuition, and I want to sort of gently encourage you to be able to do that. And yeah, absolutely, you do have the ability to see auras in the right circumstances. I'm going to give Stephen the final sort of closing words of the day. That'll be our last question and reading. Really enjoyed work with you, Stephen. Sort of closing words for Tracy Vienna.
Yeah, well, we all have to, like you say, put on a mask or a manufactured personality. You go for a job interview and you've got to sell yourself. You want to present yourself in your best light, and you know it's not always the case. And sometimes we've just got to laugh at ourselves, take it on the chin, and it just move on. That's the feeling I'm getting with this lady. It's laugh it off, chalk it off to experience. There's a whole lifetime ahead of you still. I think I've probably had 3 lifetimes so far, and I'm only 43. And I'm sure it's all going to change. I've just had a 7-month-old baby, and this is my first child. One thing about life is it never turns out the way you thought it would. And somehow, if you've got to sometimes present yourself opposite to how you really are, You know, like I say, in job interviews, situations, don't be so hard on yourself. I get the feeling you had to put on that mask and you feel very uncomfortable not being yourself. But I feel like just forgive yourself for it, because you had to do what you had to do. It's not being false. It's just suiting and catering your personality for the situation rather than being false. And I think you're probably quite an honest person. And when you do have to put that mask on, it doesn't feel right, you know, so forgive yourself. We all have to do it sometimes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. And folks, I think you'll agree that we've had a real spiritual treat tonight with Stephen joining us on the show. I've loved listening to his pearls of wisdom from him and his guide team, and I hope he'll come back and join us. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to work together sort of face to face, Stephen,
Lovely,
as well,
yeah.
even a demonstration of mediumship on the South Coast or in Wimbledon too. Lots of good feedback there. People have really enjoyed this evening. Folks, if you haven't enjoyed it, please remember to share it, do bookmark, like and subscribe to notifications on YouTube and Facebook to make sure you find out what's going on. Loads of new stuff. There's a brilliant schedule on SPTV UK about all the wonderful free content that you can pick up on. Do keep this channel free by building its community, by building its audience, by sharing this stream. You can find Steve and I both on Facebook. You can also head over to the SPTV fan page over on Facebook to have a chat about that. But thank you to our producer, Richard, and again, my special guest, Stephen Mager. Absolutely fantastic, sir. Loved having you on the show tonight. Any closing words to say goodbye to the folks?
No, I just thank you so much, yourself, Richard, and everything you do, and all the people that are running spiritualist groups, churches, centres. You know, we're all doing it for love, you know, and it's so nice to see these connections being made in the last few years online, where they wouldn't have been had it not been for COVID. So, you know, keep doing what everyone's doing. It's like we say, we're transforming spiritualism, because spiritualism's transforming lives, and it's making a big difference in the world, in mine anyway. And I can see it working through so many different people. So, you know, if you can support SBTV in any way, support Wimbledon Church or any of the churches that, you know, holding at least monthly demonstrations and services, let's get out and support them as much as we can, as well as online churches. So thank you for asking me again.
Beautiful. Great way to finish. We're sending you some love, light and laughter. Good night and God bless. Thank you, folks. Bye.
Thank you.